We want to know why Fluttershy keeps learning the same thing over and over again. Be assertive already!
Ooh, I talked about that. In fact, this episode and I actually agree.
When we face a personal obstacle in real life, it doesn't go away after one triumph. Some of our deepest personality quirks are issues we contend with every day. And with Fluttershy being so timid, I would be surprised if she didn't suffer social anxiety.
And yes, it took me a while to get there. But can you honestly say that you could learn something one time and completely change who you are?
So many ways to react to fame and misfortune. I've been looking around the fandom and witnessing the full spectrum while experiencing it myself. Like many others, I had a good giggle at how the episode was more about the fan base, showing off some of our more embarrassing sides.
Why can't I be in the book?
Twilight? Spike? Have you anything to say about this? No? Okay then. Of course, it also called out some things about the fandom I don't enjoy, such as this scene.
Fluttershy is just so painfully shy, it's hard to relate. I mean, come on!
It's not the criticism that causes discomfort. It's the expression on that Fluttershy fan as she slinks away, suddenly embarrassed about liking something. This is the unintentional damage that can come with posting a criticism without being willing to consider alternate opinions. As I recall, Dr. Wolf began making videos because he felt that Fluttershy fans didn't have a voice in review videos, and he wanted to celebrate her more interesting traits. For me, it was something else.
She's the only one who didn't really need to learn anything because she was already so cool.
No, it wasn't that.
What about Rarity? Are we really supposed to believe she learned anything she wrote in there?
Definitely not that.
Classic Pinky. Oh, she's even funnier in real life.
Come on, say it.
That's why you gotta be Team Dash!
Say it.
I'm popular and I don't like it one bit.
Say it, say it, say it, say it, say it.
Say it, 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 say it.
Twilight was better before she got wings.
There it is. That's the issue. 9 months of fans bickering over this change is what compelled me to make my very first video. And now, several years later, I'm more involved in this fandom than any before. I've gotten to meet some wonderful people, but I've also witnessed a lot of the darker interactions. Fame and misfortune drags a lot of those fallibilities into light, and I can't refute its presentation. There are people who surrender individual thought to give blind praise, just as there are those who harass and make demands of the creative team. Yet this is but a portion of the push and pull between people who put forth creative work and fans who channel their energy in surprising and sometimes damaging ways. And it can be summed up in 3 little words.
Get a life, will you, people?
That clip is from a 1986 Saturday Night Live skit that showed Trekkies at their most socially awkward. The extreme where fans focus on their fandom to the exclusion of everyday life. And I think we've all had experiences with this. It is tempting to invest all of one's energy into a single pursuit. It's why fan originated from fanatic, which might be the end of the story were it not for William Shatner's thoughts after Kirk's last adventure. During Star Trek Generations, James T. Kirk breathed his last.
Oh my.
No offense, but I preferred George Takei.
Oh my.
And to Shatner's surprise, he felt bad about having the character killed off. As he wrote in his book, Get a Life, but in the weeks and months immediately following Kirk's death scene, I found myself grieving. I felt guilty, melancholy, and depressed over a fictional funeral. Had there always been a deeper connection than I was willing to admit? Was Star Trek really that important to me? Had I always been a fan? And so Shatner undertook a quest. He started attending Star Trek conventions incognito, thanks to a full mask cosplay. Fans were strangely willing to talk about their favorite show to a masked man with a tape recorder, which I will caution everyone, that's not a wise policy. But in this case it turned out positive because Shatner began to develop an appreciation for what the fandom had done for people, perhaps more than the show itself. As Shatner writes, I really believe that these people, through Star Trek, learned that everyone has value and that anyone can be deserving of respect, even if they're not perfect. Combine all that with messages about leading a moral, righteous life, and that can be a very empowering, uplifting blueprint for life. So I think that with a little nudge from Star Trek, these folks have indeed found a life and confidence and self-esteem. Let's modify this idea a bit, shall we? I really believe that these people, through My Little Pony, learned that everyone has value and that anyone can be deserving of respect, even if they're not perfect. Combine all of that with the messages about leading a moral, righteous life, and that can be a very empowering, uplifting blueprint for life. Though I can't credit this expression to Shatner, I think the core idea still applies. Whether you've been raised on the legends of sports idols, historical icons, or fictional heroes, each representation is used to convey the idea of how to lead a decent life, to be more than a baseline of selfishness that might allow for survival, but not growth. The whole point is that these fandoms can offer a chance to become a better person, albeit through unexpected means. Shatner's original SNL skit certainly highlighted how focusing one's energy the wrong way made them less involved in their own lives. And Fame and Misfortune continues this idea by pointing out not just the demanding or entitled fans,
We want answers!
Yeah, we're entitled to know!
but also fans who allow their enthusiasm to control their actions and close them off to outside ideas.
I whipped out all the Twilight Sparkle lessons because they were getting in the way of the good ones.
Side note, I noticed that Twilight was the only one who didn't have a group of enthusiastic fans. There were those ponies who wanted autographs for unread books, but no one else was hounding her for attention. Harsh. Double side note, I get a kick that the entitled pony had a cutie mark that is a glass half empty. What I would give to see her argue with a pony that had an identical but glass half full cutie mark. It's also worth mentioning that I've seen online personalities push back against elements of their own fan base. Jim Sterling responded to criticism by presenting a 100% factual review absent any personal opinion.
Final Fantasy XIII is a video game released on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. It was developed by Square Enix. It stars characters. One of the characters is called Lightning, and that is the main character of the game that can be played with a controller.
And Lil Karibo had a twofer response through his Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged series.
Where's the new episode? Where's the new episode? Oh, you guys must be little Karibo's overly demanding fan base.
Yeah, he just doesn't care anymore!
These things were better when they were like 5 minutes long!
They should only be 3 minutes long!
Naruto Bridge so much better!
And in all the cases, I can't fault the point they make. Elements within any fandom can be impatient, rude, or aggressive. Because fandoms are made up of people, and there's no one way to be a fan. Some ways are certainly better for the overall enjoyment, but that's where we get to the one line in Fame and Misfortune with which I take issue.
It's not your fault. It's every pony else's. They're just focusing on the wrong things.
This ties back to when I talked about the death of the author. Between the writer's expression and the audience's interpretation, there is a gulf where intention falls away, because the audience is not a blank slate waiting to receive the story's exact message. Two people can look at an event or a character and take away polar opposite interpretations. That's because each person brings their own experiences, worldview, and emotions. How unnerving would it be to meet someone who had no true opinion?
If I don't survive, tell my wife hello.
And that's why I think that single line was an error. You can't resent people for having an opinion. You can question it, challenge it, express why you think that opinion is wrong, but to resent someone for the act of having an opinion really doesn't accomplish anything. That said, not all opinions are created equal. That's where diversity comes into play. Fans test one another's views, challenge assumptions, and inspire more thought. I often wish they could do so without the flame wars, insults, and melodrama, but it's an imperfect world and we ourselves are likewise imperfect. Ooh, that sounds like a song cue.
We're not flawless. We're a work in progress. We've got dents and we've got quirks, but it's our flaws that make us work.
There's a temptation to see this as a defense against fandom criticism, but I think you can also interpret it as a validation for the fandom. We are imperfect, and yet much like the characters with whom we identify, those flaws help us stand out as individuals and can, paradoxically, help form connections. If we were perfect, we wouldn't need anyone else. It's one of the reasons I became so fond of this show. While I see a lot of my own positive traits in these characters, I also identify with Applejack's stubbornness, Rarity's sensitivity, Fluttershy's anxiety, Twilight's obsessiveness, Pinky's overenthusiasm, which can override awareness, but not Rainbow Dash's ego, because I am the humblest being in the universe. If anything, I think I'm more drawn towards these characters because of their flaws, and how they're presented as likable, not in spite of these flaws, but because those are linked to their positive traits. They can't just stop doing a negative because that would mean eliminating their positive traits as well. Which again comes back to fans and how their behavior can sometimes cross a line from enjoyment to fixation. Yes, there are folks such as myself who critique and study story facets far more than people would expect. It certainly goes against the norm, and I've heard plenty of people say that a critic's nitpicks can ruin the show's enjoyment. Yet consider that even the most negative critic still thinks this show is worth talking about. There is something that attracts people. even if that attraction isn't what the creators intended. That's another aspect of Fame and Misfortune. While it does show how both negativity and enthusiasm can reach unhealthy levels, at no point do Twilight and Starlight say these people shouldn't be reading the journal. Yes, the two characters who actually got the intended message were the target audience's age group, but at no point does Twilight say that older ponies shouldn't be reading. If anything, she wants all ages and genders to enjoy it and see the positivity within. But because the audience can focus on the details and lose sight of the overall message, it doesn't always work.
Are Pinkie Pie and Applejack related or what?
Is that really a thing? I haven't heard a lot of fans express that question, and it never really weighed on me. Then again, another aspect of a fandom is that no one has the total view. I've seen many fans express a self-loathing after this episode, that they view this fandom as toxic or wasteful. My own experience has been very different. How fitting then that this episode came out during BronyCon. Because at BronyCon, I got to meet so many generous and creative people. I got to see just how much a shared passion can draw others together, and possibly set the stage for even more special events.
Cool question.
And this view isn't limited to just BronyCon. I've likewise seen such things at Everfree Northwest, BabsCon, PonyCon, and Pacific PonyCon, Running of the Leaves, Crystal Mountain, and Nightmare Nights.
My God.
Oh my god! Are you serious?
There is a lot of good in this fandom, and it shouldn't be overshadowed by drama or conflict. All of the elements shown in Fame and Misfortune are legitimate criticisms, but it's not the complete picture. I wouldn't call the episode a straw man argument against fans, but if people think this is the only view, then I think they've gone too far in one direction. With that in mind, I want to propose an alternate take on this episode. Not from a fan standpoint, but from a creative. It can be exciting and uplifting to put forth a work for the world to see, and we can be blindsided by how people react. The challenge to people who put forth their creativity is to accept the negatives while focusing on the positives. The people who find enjoyment and maybe even hope in a work. It's part of what I enjoy about stories in general. Sure, they may have been created for entertainment or just to promote a product.
Yeah, but the purpose of the journal isn't supposed to be marketing.
Oh, the dissonance in that statement. But if done with care and talent, it can somehow mean more. And it can impact the lives of others in ways we don't always anticipate, but that doesn't make the impact any less real. And that's my message to fellow fans who might not feel confident in their own presence within the world. You are doing more than you realize. Every little act of kindness, humility, and courage has an impact. And I hope your time in this fandom, however brief or long you choose, motivates you to attempt more. A fandom can be fertile soil in which we grow, but it shouldn't become an end in itself. For as Shatner counter-roasted,
"Why is everyone who's inspired by me such a fat loser? I don't know."
It doesn't change the fact that he did inspire people to be more than before. I'm Silver-Quill. I've made friendships, learned more about myself, and hopefully had a positive impact on others by reviewing a cartoon about pastel horses originally marketed towards young women. I don't say that with a straight face, but I do say it with great pride. Thanks for watching.